What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, well, it is officially schedule release day for the NFL, a long-awaited release day as it was moved back a whole week. Timed up perfectly with the bachelor party, I'm not going to lie, so I'm very thankful for that. But there have been two games that have been leaked that we'll dive into, and what ones we feel are better, what ones we feel could have been a little bit better for the Pittsburgh Steelers schedule, on top of a lot of quarterback talk. We're talking Justin Fields and his shot to start for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because it seems to be growing that there's a belief that he could overtake Russell Wilson. Meanwhile, there's one giant question about Russell Wilson that everybody seems to be asking. And then an NFC quarterback that ESPN is saying could be a trade target for the Pittsburgh Steelers, not this offseason, but next offseason. It's been a beautiful week here in the Burgh. It is finally schedule release day. How are we feeling, my friend?
I'm very excited. I'm pretty excited to actually see some games, get put on the schedule. We can start to map out more of what this season is going to look like. We feel like we have a good idea of what the roster is going to look like. Now we just need the games, and then we need training camp to get here. We're just taking one step closer to the season, and that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. I will say that week one, at least it was leaked that it was not the game that I think I was hoping for. I was looking to go spend a weekend in Denver, Monday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers had to ruin that one. I'm sorry, but in my personal opinion, Russell Wilson versus Sean Payton is much better than Aaron Rodgers versus Brock Purdy. I know I'm being selfish there and nobody else agrees with me, but I would like to go to Denver for a weekend. I hope that's the case in week two. We got two schedule releases, plus a couple of ESPN news that I think we got to talk about. Nick, I'm going to toss it down to you. What do we got so far this morning?
Yeah, let's start with the schedule releases, or at least the reported schedule releases for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are supposedly starting the season down in Atlanta for the Arthur Smith revenge game against the Atlanta Falcons. And the other one that has been reported is a Christmas Day matchup against the two-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs.
That's not bad. Steven, how are you feeling about week one in Atlanta? Is Arthur Smith versus his old team, Kirk Cousins' first game with the Falcons, is that good enough?
Well, I mean, I'm looking more at the Scotty Miller revenge game storyline, the Cordell Patterson revenge game storyline. But yep. I'm intrigued by this. I think these are two teams that are poised to really improve off of their 2023 marks. I think the Falcons could actually be pretty good this year. I think the same thing about the Steelers. So I think this will be an interesting early measuring stick for both sides, just because of all the changes that they're going through. Will we learn anything particularly insightful? I mean, it's the kind of game where I think both teams are going to go in there saying, oh my God, if we lose to this team, our season is over. And it's funny when both sides are acting that way, because both sides kind of think that the other one is trash a little bit when they think that. But I think both these teams are pretty good, and I think that you could get a pretty compelling game out of it. Obviously, all the storylines that are going on will be helpful for our side of the job, but I think that you could also get a pretty compelling football game out of this, especially, kind of Cousins versus that defense. I mean, there's a ton of talent on that Atlanta offense, and then just seeing what the Steelers can do against 49ers or Falcons defense, that's I think a little bit better than most people give them credit for. So I'm not out on visiting Atlanta for the season opener. I don't think that's too bad of a matchup.
No, I agree. I look at Atlanta, I say it's a good week one matchup. It's a good bar setter. Like, can you beat the Atlanta Falcons, a team that's going to be better than they were last year? You get Kirk Cousins, you're immediately a playoff contender at least. And I think that's a good spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Gives Russell Wilson a good defense without sending him out there against the San Francisco 49ers and saying, all right, see what happens. Allows the fans to get juiced up. Mercedes-Benz Stadium is always awesome to go to, so I think fans would be excited to go down there. It's just not overpowering. I think it's a good week 1 p.m. game. If they make it primetime, I think that they could have did a little bit better, but I think it's a good middle of Sunday. This is week 1. Get the fans riled up. Here we go type of environment for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not upset about it. I think they could have juiced it. With Russell Wilson, I expected them to juice it up as much as possible. I expected them to be the headline, the Steelers to be one of the big storylines that they got to push. I'm okay with this one as a 1B or a second option, because I think that there's good storylines. I think that this is a good Falcons team that is going to test you, and that's what the Steelers want. They don't want to go in there and have all of their hopes. I mean, last year we watched the San Francisco 49ers put a whooping on the Steelers, and we sat there and went, all right, So for the next week, how do we remind everybody that this is just week one and the season is not over? I think the Falcons are a much better bar setter to kind of go in there, get some early momentum, and kind of keep things, fluid on opening weekend. Then you host the Kansas City Chiefs reportedly on Christmas. I'm not going to lie to you. As a reporter, as somebody who deals with this, I texted you this yesterday when you sent it to me. There is nothing that would ruin my Christmas more than to watch the Steelers lose to the Kansas City Chiefs and then potentially have a locker room full of guys that don't want to talk to you because they just lost. Totally understandable. I wouldn't want to talk either. And I just spent Christmas with a bunch of miserable people. Like that's as bad as it gets personally. Again, I'm being super selfish with the schedule release, but I think I have to. Your thoughts on Christmas Day against the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm pretty against football on Christmas, especially
100%.
Like it's going to be on a Wednesday. Like, what are we talking
100%.
about? We're trying way too hard to fit, a bunch of games into a holiday that I don't think they really belong on. So I'm anti-Christmas NFL to begin with, but
yep.
For all those reasons, like you said, I don't think this just doesn't really work out for anyone. Like, would the Chiefs want to make a trip out to Pittsburgh on Christmas? No, I don't think so. Would anyone from Pittsburgh want to host the Kansas City Chiefs, arguably your biggest game of the year, on Christmas and have to split your time between a holiday, the biggest holiday of the year, and a trip to Acrisure Stadium? I don't think so. And then obviously, the reporter side of it is the last part that anyone really cares about, but that one stinks too. This is not very ideal, I think, for anyone. If it does end up happening that way, I think you could end up getting a pretty decent game out of this. I think it depends on how the rest of the season goes for both teams, obviously. But I mean, I think from that perspective, it could be an interesting measuring stick for the Steelers. I mean, late in the season, you assume that they've kind of got their feet under them offensively. I would love to see this defense kind of test and stress Patrick Mahomes a little bit and see what they can do against an elite level quarterback like that. Like, there is a scenario where this is a massive primetime game, two teams at the top of their divisions in the AFC, potentially battling for playoff seeding. All the other stuff, all the other circumstances around it would stink, but I think the actual football on the field could actually be really compelling.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good game. I think the NFL knew what they did. I got a lot of problems with a Wednesday, Christmas Day game, but those are just personal. And I think the players do too. I doubt we talked to a player who's like, you want to know what I was really excited to find out? That I play on Saturday, because that's what the terms are. If you play on Christmas, you're going to play on Saturday the week before. I play on Saturday. I have essentially Monday and Tuesday, just Monday to practice. And then I have to play a game against the best team in the NFL on Wednesday and ruin my Christmas. Like, I don't know. I don't know about that one. I think you could get Acrisure Stadium bumping, but I just think the terms of it, ridiculous by the NFL, money-making machine, obviously. The actual game itself, I agree. I think Patrick Mahomes versus Russell Wilson, I think if Justin Fields is in there by any circumstance, that's even more exciting. I think if the Steelers are good and you're looking at this as, just like you said, playoff position, that's as good as like the NFL timed that one good. They did a good job there. For all my selfish reasons, I'm not a fan of it, but for all the Steelers fans, I mean, you're pumped to get to watch your team on Christmas Day. No doubt about it. All right, Nick, what else we got for us?
Well, you guys talked about Steelers versus Falcons in week one, Kirk Cousins potentially being the starter for his new team. Bill Barnwell of ESPN then threw out yesterday that maybe next year Kirk Cousins is in week one with the Steelers again, but this time on the Steelers sideline as their starting quarterback. What do you think about that one?
Steven, I'm going to ask you first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, Kirk Cousins is a good football player and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think he could elevate the Steelers to a level, give them a level of quarterback play that they haven't had in a while. Man, he costs a lot of money, like, even more than you think. Like, I had to look up his, cap hit this morning. It is it's more than $60 million. Like, the Steelers conservatively, at best, have roughly $85 million in cap space next year, and that's before you start talking about, new deals for guys like Jalen Warren or Pat Freiermuth. And there's some other big name free agents. What you do with Cam Hayward as well is a big question too. So I don't know. I think at this point there are too many questions about where the Steelers are at salary cap wise to even consider this. It would have to be a deal like the Denver Broncos had with Russell Wilson, quite honestly. This is all also assuming that, that Russell Wilson I guess he could play really well and then price himself out of Pittsburgh, but it also assumes that they don't get a deal done with Justin Fields, that they don't turn to him as the backup option and get him on a cheap deal as well. And it also assumes that both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields don't look like your guy moving forward for any number of reasons, which I have a hard time believing that of those two, they'll strike out on both of them. I just think the odds of that are pretty low. So Kirk Cousins really doesn't seem like an option at all. If you want to mortgage the rest of your future and you think Kirk Cousins can carry you to a Super Bowl, then fine. I don't see it that way, and it doesn't seem like a wise investment of your money.
No. Look at I'm a big Kirk Cousins guy. If Kirk Cousins has won a couple of Super Bowls, and you're looking at him saying there is almost an impossible shot that he comes to Pittsburgh and doesn't win a Super Bowl, yeah, shoot for the stars. Go win a Super Bowl. Who cares? But Kirk Cousins is a really good quarterback, who is as expensive as quarterbacks come in the NFL and hasn't won a Super Bowl. So hasn't even gotten to a Super Bowl. So I don't look at him and say this is a guy that you're putting all your eggs in one basket and guaranteeing yourself a shot at Lombardi. And if that's not the case, then it's not worth it, because you could find another quarterback that doesn't completely ruin the rest of your roster, just like you said, and Kirk Cousins does. Kirk Cousins ruins the rest of your roster. You have to make really tough financial decisions, really tough roster decisions by acquiring Kirk Cousins. On top of, what are you giving up to go get? It's not like you're giving up a 6th-round pick to go get Kirk Cousins. You know what I mean? You're giving up a 1st-round pick to go get Kirk Cousins. That just doesn't make any sense. This is up there. We've talked about a lot of wild stuff. Most of the time it's from places where you expect wild stuff. ESPN, I was like, wow, really? Kirk Cousins to the Pittsburgh Steelers next offseason. That's also banking on Michael Penix being an absolute stud and somehow earning the job, and the Falcons saying, yeah, we screwed up big time by signing Kirk. That was our issue. It's banking on the Steelers not having a long-term plan for Justin Fields, which I highly doubt that they don't to some degree. It's just like you said, banking that Russ stinks. There's just too much that goes into this to say Kirk Cousins makes sense.
Right, and then also counting on the Falcons to eat 40, for Cousins to be so bad that they want to eat $40 million.
$40 million.
Yeah, of dead money to. Yeah, this one doesn't make any sense at all. And I think you also look at the Steelers' wide receiver situation. George Pickens could be really good, but I think even in the most generous projections of Roman Wilson, he's not the kind of receiver that I think can elevate Kirk Cousins. That's the thing about Kirk Cousins. When he's at his most successful, he's had a Justin Jefferson to throw to. He's had a Jordan Addison to throw to.
Yep.
He's had really good players around him that have really good receivers and skill players around him that have made him look a lot better. And that's not to take anything away from him, but I don't think the Steelers have the kind of pass catching core right now that could elevate him, make him look like the quarterback that he's been over the past year, 2 years, things like that.
No, exactly. And just like you said, at the beginning of this, he'd have to be so bad for the Falcons to say we're going to bail on $40 million, which, again, why are you making the deal if you're the Steelers if Kirk Cousins is so bad that the Falcons just bailed out? Doesn't make – nope, I'm scratching it all. Kirk Cousins, not a fan of it. Not a fan. Let's talk about 2 quarterbacks in Pittsburgh right now, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. Both of them got a bunch of headlines surrounding them as we approach OTAs and minicamp. We'll start with Justin Fields here. There's a growing belief from a lot of people, including a couple of big-time analysts and some team insiders, saying that there's likely a 50-50 shot that Justin Fields starts in 2024. There's a lot of people, David Carr, former first overall pick, included, saying that Justin Fields might overtake Russell Wilson before the season even starts. What are you putting on Justin Fields' start? Do you put any stock on Justin Fields being the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season?
Yeah, 50-50 seems real generous. I think it's entirely possible that Fields starts a game. I think there's absolutely a scenario where, Russell Wilson gets hurt or something like that, and he's got to step in for a couple games. But the idea that he completely overtakes Wilson for the starting job seems pretty. It seems like a real long shot to me. Because I think not only would Wilson have to be, this is a little bit, I think, I think we talked about that. This is. Wilson, I think, would have to start actively hurting the team. It couldn't just be that he's not throwing for enough yards or is not being dynamic enough, in my opinion. I think if he starts throwing a bunch of picks and starts taking bad sacks, that's how I could see it kind of start to come together. But the sacks are one thing that's been a part of Wilson's game for a while, but the interceptions, not really as much. There's not as much on his track record that tells you he doesn't take care of the football, that he can't make smart decisions. And I think that's the only way that you would say, it's time to go with Fields if you're the Steelers. So I think it's only injury or a real disaster of a season from Russ that I'm not really expecting to come that would force Wilson or Fields into a starting job. I like Fields. I think he's dynamic. I think he's got a ton of talent, but it just doesn't seem like he's in the plan for this year really at all.
No, I agree. I think that it's all like everything the Steelers have told us. We've gone far enough away. That's what happens is we move far enough away from the league meetings and, Russ getting signed and Mike Tomlin talking and all these things to the point where we start to forget what they said and we start to just, those words don't mean anything anymore. But if you go back, I mean, the message has been clear the whole time. Russell Wilson is going to be in pole position to start. The Steelers have a plan for Russell Wilson. They want Russell Wilson to be the guy. I think that during this time of the offseason, you start to forget what you thought a month ago because, you haven't heard those in a while. So maybe they're not as true anymore. They are. They hold just as much ground. Russell Wilson is the guy this year, unless proven otherwise. And just like you said, it's going to be so hard. There's almost no shot that Justin Fields walks in as the week 1 starter. During the season, again, just like you said, if Russ is throwing interception after interception, if he's just having an absolutely disastrous start to the season, yep, okay, I could see Justin Fields going in there. But I have a hard time believing Russell Wilson's going to walk in here and be like, I am now a really bad quarterback. I am just not a guy that's built to start in the NFL, so Justin Fields has to be the guy. The Steelers don't have it in their plans. We all want to talk about it, and people want to make it out to seem like, hey, Justin Fields is really talented. I could see that happening. The Steelers are as slow as humanly possible when it comes to putting guys in position to start. They keep guys, they keep rookies, they keep all these new guys as off to the side as long as you possibly can before they're almost forced to make that change. I think that's how they're going to approach Justin Fields is how long can we keep him on the bench to learn before we force him into a starting role, because I think they believe that gives him the best shot long-term to be the starter. That's how I view the situation.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I think they do really view Justin Fields as a long-term investment.
Yeah.
I think first of all that they're going to try to extend him or sign him to a new contract before this season ends. They're going to try to lock him up. They're going to try to lock him up cheap, and they're going to try to do that before he starts playing and before he starts showing you anything. Quite honestly, I think they have a lot of faith in his talent, and they don't want. I don't know, not that they don't want him to succeed on the field, but I think they would be fine if he didn't succeed on the field quite so quickly, and if they could get him for a cheaper rate, they could lock him up long-term. If they could say, hey, Russ, thanks for the memories. Thanks for the 1 year to help us bridge the gap from whatever the quarterback situation was before to our next generation, our next sign of what's to come. I don't think they're going to actively, hurt his career or hold him on the bench if he's the guy, but I don't think they would be mad if Wilson or Fields, kind of took a redshirt year a little bit.
No chance. That's exactly it. They are in a situation and they understand how good of a situation there is. They might have the best bridge quarterback of all time. They might have a bridge quarterback that's outside of maybe Peyton Manning, who wasn't supposed to be a bridge quarterback, turned into a bridge quarterback for nobody. It was supposed to be Brock Osweiler. That didn't happen. They have hands down the greatest, one of the greatest bridge quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, and they have an opportunity to take full advantage of that, and they're going to. They're not going to rush things. They're not going to make sharp decisions. And again, we've talked about this time and time again. Do you know how hard it would be for Russell Wilson to lose a starting job in training camp? Who are you? What are you doing? How many interceptions are you throwing? I've been at training camp where Ben Roethlisberger has thrown multiple interceptions in a day. Nobody batted an eye. Nobody thought twice about it. Mitch Trubisky he looked terrible at times in training camp. Still got the starting job because he was the starting quarterback going into it. The Steelers are going to look at Russell Wilson the same way. They're going to say, he's our starting guy. It's going to be nearly impossible for Justin to change that, but at least we're going to give Justin a shot to develop. So I would give it almost nothing. During the season, maybe it improves a little bit, but again, I just don't want people to get their hopes up. I think that's the biggest thing is I don't want people to get, hey, Justin Fields is going to be the guy. Justin Fields is going to get a shot. Just don't fall for that. Not yet. Yeah. If we go to training camp, it could be different.
Yeah. And I think even the stuff about, they're going to be packages for him. He's going to be, a part of the offense. I don't really buy that stuff that much either. I don't think they're going to risk, I don't know. It just doesn't, it seems very un-Steelers to say, well, we're just going to use Justin Fields. We're going to use our backup quarterback as a running back sometimes, or a slot receiver. That that stuff doesn't make much sense to me either. So like you said, don't want anyone to get their hopes up. Like I think Fields, again, is really talented. I think both of us really like him, but he's a long-term investment for the Steelers, not someone they're going to try to really shoehorn into the offense this year when he doesn't really belong.
No, and honestly, like when you talk about other packages, like if this was Matt Canada's offense, I could see him trying to do some stupid stuff by putting both of them on the field. Arthur Smith ain't going to do that. I could see both of those quarterbacks being on the field 3 times this season at the same time, just in like, all right, let's test it out. Screw it. It's week 7. Let's see if it works. At least then we got it in the back pocket for the Super Bowl or something else. But I could see 3 times absolutely max. All right, now there's another story. This one surrounding Russell Wilson about a pretty big question, I feel like. A question that we've talked about a couple of times, but that Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer brought up on the Herd with Colin Cowherd, saying, quote, one of the issues Russell has had over the years is with relating to his teammates. I think one of the superpowers of a lot of the truly great quarterbacks is they can be the celebrity over here and then over here be a normal guy in the locker room. He continued to say that's really who they are, and that's how they come off to their teammates. The ability to be a regular guy is something that Russell's never really had, which I think has caused him problems with some of these teams, excuse me. Russell Wilson's gotten a lot of compliments so far. Is there a part of you that is a little bit worried that Russell Wilson may be too big of a celebrity to be in the city of Pittsburgh? Because, I mean, quite frankly, they've had Ben Roethlisberger, who's a Pittsburgh celebrity, as good as it gets, as big as it gets, but was never really in the limelight. And this is a blue-collar town. You've been here, we've been here long enough to know how blue-collar the city of Pittsburgh actually is.
Yeah. I don't really worry about this at all. To be quite honest with you, I get it. Russ seems like a little bit of a weirdo. But I think there are a lot of quarterbacks who are like that. I mean, I think one of the people that Albert Breer like cites in this is Tom Brady as being like, a quote unquote like normal guy. Yeah. Tom Brady was a complete freak. What are we talking about? Like Tom Brady was as big a celebrity as it comes in professional football. He was also a complete weirdo, and he was really good. And I'm not like saying that Russell Wilson is going to be Tom Brady or anything, but like, who in the Steelers locker room is normal, is like a normal guy? Is George Pickens a normal guy?
No.
Is TJ Watt a normal guy? Like,
yes. TJ Watt's as blue collar as they come. Let's not act like he's not.
But like what does blue collar mean? Like, can we like get a definition on that?
TJ Watt, scary, doesn't say much, just goes to work.
Yeah, but like, how's that
does
any better?
One taco commercial a year.
Yeah, and like, what's weird about Russell Wilson though? That he like does high knees on the plane or something like that. Like that he's a little corny sometimes. Like I think this guy still has a commitment to winning, a commitment to being really good at football, and I think that's what shines through more in a locker room, especially in a professional football locker room, than, I don't know, like being someone that your like teammates want to go have a beer with at a certain point. Like, yeah, I don't know. That to me, that it seems a little overblown. I'm not as concerned about this at all. I mean, maybe I get proven wrong, and during the season, everyone's, we're talking to people and they're all trashing Russ for being a weirdo. But like, I don't know, like Russ is, I don't feel like you've heard about this. Is like, I think fans have talked a lot about, oh, Russ is kind of weird. Like he was doing this weird thing on the plane or whatever the hell. But like, I don't think you hear the same thing from his teammates. Like, especially in Denver, like, all you heard was about how hard of a worker he was. When he got kind of forced out by Sean Payton, there were a lot of teammates that came to his defense. So I don't think you do that by not being able. I don't think you get that kind of reaction if you can't relate to your teammates at all.
Look, I agree. I'm not worried. I think that's all overblown. I think in the city of Pittsburgh, you might get some Yinzers, some true-blooded Yinzers who are like, this guy's got to get off the TV. What are you doing? Like, get him off. Stop going on the show. Stop talking. Stop hanging out with your wife. I think you'll get some of those. But I think the rest of it, like, I find it really hard to believe. I've never met anybody in the locker room. Like, we've had some characters in the locker room. I've never met anybody who's like, that guy's too big to be here. You know what I mean? I don't like him. I've never met anybody. That's the thing about a locker room is it is every facet of life. It is every different type of human being all into one thing, and nobody cares whatsoever. There is zero care about who that person is. All they care about is they just all get along. Every single one of them get along. It's crazy. So I have no issues and no concerns about Russ being a weirdo. I got some concerns that I'm going to have to write some weird headlines this year. Like that, like Russ is like, jogging on the team plane and doing whatever and like, maybe like spilled some coffee in Minka's office and started a fight or something. But besides that, like, I think everything will be totally fine. And just like you said, like he's already gotten confidence. He's already taken those steps to kind of adjust to the offense and get used to these guys. And I think that's all you were looking for. Like, I just, build a commodity and then it's fine. And I also think Mike Tomlin's the perfect coach for that. Like, I think that you get a guy who knows how to be a leader of men better than almost anybody in the NFL, maybe better than anybody in the NFL. And I get Russ as a veteran. He's been here for a long time, but I think he could still learn from Mike Tomlin.
Yeah. And I think the other side of this is like, Antonio Brown wasn't a locker room problem until like very late. Like people were willing to put up with a lot of weird stuff from him because he was really good at football. So like,
Russell Wilson wasn't a locker room problem until he was gone,
Yeah, like
nobody in Seattle when Russ was in Seattle was talking about, man, Russ is a problem. It was all afterwards.
Yeah. And it's like, to a certain extent, just play well, like win football games, and that's very obvious. But like, I don't think we're going to be hearing about, oh, Russ is a problem in the locker room or anything like that. If he's throwing for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns or 300 yards or something in a game like that, that's not going to be the story afterwards. And that's a chicken and egg thing. Like, maybe if he's a bad locker room presence, maybe that affects his play and that stuff is connected. But I really don't think that stuff comes out until someone starts playing poorly. And I think that's just a product of when we're losing, we get pissed at each other. And so I really think that as long as Russ like plays well, this isn't going to be a story at all. It's not going to matter. And I think it'll probably be used as something against him if he starts to play poorly. So I would just be careful about like, assigning any super huge value to when someone says, oh, a guy like could be I take every, quote unquote locker room cancer story with a grain of salt, just because I think it's so dependent on who says what to who at what time. And narratives can get spun out of control that way. And I think I can kind of see the beginnings of something like that forming here with Russell Wilson.
Yeah. Unless I am told personally, which I have been in the past, I've had players tell me like this guy was an issue, but unless that happens, I don't like I don't form those opinions. I try to stay away from those opinions because just like you said, most of the time they're just, you have no idea. We're not in there. We're in the locker room for 30 minutes a day. We talk to these guys on a strictly professional basis. Sometimes you talk to them on a personal basis outside of the locker room, but you're not there. You're not there all day. You have no idea what's going on. You have no idea how everybody's feeling, let alone one guy. So I agree 100%. Got no worries on Russ, but I think it was funny. And I mean, here we are. It's a part of the season. We need OTAs, man. We need them bad. Give us some football. Thankfully, those start next weekend. With that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I apologize if you guys could hear somebody cutting into my floor this entire episode because I felt the floor shake all 30 minutes of this. But, we got to do what we got to do when we're working from home. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our stuff at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.